I'm Mark Halperin.
And I'm John Heilemann, and with all due respect to Hillary Clinton, it's really great to hear your voice. She speaks! After 40,150 minutes, Hillary Clinton looked at the press today in Cedar Falls, Iowa, heard their questions, and then opened her mouth and gave some answers. There's no time to spare. Let's go to our big wall of Hillary answers. Topic number one, her State Department emails. Last night, the State Department proposed that they would all come out at once in January. Today, a federal judge said, they got to come out on a rolling basis starting sooner than that. The question for Hillary, in effect, do you want them out sooner or later?
I have said repeatedly, I want those emails out. Nobody has a bigger interest in getting them released than I do. I respect the State Department. They have their process that they do for everybody, not just for me. But anything that they might do to expedite that process, I heartily support.
Okay, so Mark, let's be fair to Secretary Clinton here. This is really out of her hands. She long ago turned over these emails, gave them to the State Department. They now have control of the emails, right? Okay, taking that on board. Did she help her cause politically today with this answer or not?
I think she did, in the sense that this is one place where she has been on the side of public disclosure. She's argued they should come out. Conspiracy theorists and close scrutinizers might say that the Democratic State Department is trying to do her a favor by having them come out in January. But I think based on the judge's order, based on what she wants, and based on the Obama administration, I think they probably will come out sooner. She helped herself getting on that train again.
The whole heart of this email story that is problematic for her is the expungement of a bunch of email that she deemed personal. She got rid of those. She trashed them. These are the ones she turned over. And so it makes perfect sense that these are the ones that she's perfectly happy to see come out, because she already knows there's nothing politically damaging in them.
The looming fight not addressed by her today or by the judge is the redactions.
Right.
You know, the reason these are being delayed is they got to scrub them. Which ones can't be turned over in whole or in part? That's where I think there's going to be questions about whether she'll waive privacy rights and other things.
If I were her and I was facing the lack of competition she's facing in the Democratic nomination fight, I would want them out sooner. I want them out tomorrow. Like, it's like, why not just get this all out and get it moved on? If I was with her, I think she actually...
It might be in her interest to have them come out in January, because there'll be so much news about the primaries and the caucuses, they'll cover it up.
Baby, okay.
Cover up was not exactly what I meant. Or maybe it was. On to Sid. As in Sid Blumenthal, the unofficial State Department whisperer, whom the New York Times exposed as simultaneously sending Hillary Clinton advice emails about Libya while he was working some deals in that same country and working for the Clinton Foundation. The question from the media today at her press conference was, can you explain your relationship with Sid Blumenthal, Secretary Clinton? And I have a follow-up, harking back to the Lincoln bedroom days. Should Americans expect that if you're elected president, you'll keep your longtime pals around?
I have many, many old friends, and I always think that it's important when you get into politics to have friends you had before you were in politics and to understand what's on their minds. And he's been a friend of mine for a long time. He sent me unsolicited emails, which I passed on in some instances, and I see that that's just part of the give and take.
All right, she does have many, many old friends, but given that almost everybody in Obama world thinks Sid Blumenthal has trouble with a capital T, a lot of people in Hillary Clinton's world thinks that. Why is she standing by her man in this case?
Well, boy, I mean, I know we're going to dissect the answer to the question, which was totally non-responsive, but let's just stick with Sidney Blumenthal for a minute. Shady would be a kind description of Sidney Blumenthal, but there are two things that are true about the Clintons in this area. One, they like people who work in the dark. They like that. And they like loyalty. He's been loyal to her for a long time, and they like the kind of masters of the dark arts. They have an insatiable appetite for that kind of thing. They will never lose Sidney, I don't think.
No, and he is someone who has been loyal to him. In this case, a lot of Democrats
done so much dirty work.
A lot of Democrats who distrusted him before, look at what he did in peddling stuff about Libya, which was in line with his business interests. Now, look, he's not the only one who did it. There are plenty of people who talk to governments of both parties and where they've got business interests involved. But, boy, this is bad news. But she stood by him absolutely today. And the question that wasn't asked about Sidney, I'm going over here, This is key. The question that wasn't asked was,
James,
did you know that he
Yes,
had
of course.
interest? Because if she knew he had interest before Libya and she was sharing that information, bad. And if Sidney Blumenthal didn't tell her that he had business interests in Libya and he was sending those emails, she should cut him off.
This question was terribly asked, not rigorously asked, and it allowed her. Oh, God, James, shut up. We said we were going over, and yet you're still there making noise on the screen. All right, incoming. Question number 3. Hillary, Secretary Clinton, you're in the tip-top echelon of income earners in this country. How do you expect so-called everyday Americans to relate to you?
Obviously, Bill and I have been blessed, and we're very grateful for the opportunities that we had, but we've never forgotten where we came from, and we've never forgotten the kind of country that we want to see for our granddaughter, and that means that we're going to fight to make sure that everybody has the same chances to live up to his or her own God-given potential. So I think that most Americans understand that the deck is stacked for those at the top, and I am running a campaign that is very clearly stating we want to reshuffle that deck.
That's a smooth answer. No stylistic glitches there. She answered that pretty well. Why is she so much better answering that question than the previous couple questions?
Because the one way Hillary Clinton is misunderstood is she's running for president because she wants to help people. And as rich as they've become and as much as they lived in the White House and she traveled the world, she understands the real lives of real people and the struggles that middle class and working class people have. And when she's calm and not defensive and she answers that way, she shows her heart and she's at her best.
Well, also, very well practiced. This is a question.
That too.
She's had a lot of time to think about
and
this
has messed up before.
She's messed it up before. She said things like the fact that, they were dead broke when they came out of the White House. She's been tone deaf before. If she was not non-tone deaf, if she was not right, she couldn't get the style right on this question, I'd be like ready to give up on her completely as a candidate because this was pretty much, you could see this one coming a mile away.
She has become a very rich person, but she understands the lives of people in this country, and she's dedicated her life to it. And the haters who hate her, you can say negative things about her, and we did already on this show, but the haters who hate her don't get that that's what she's about.
No silver spoon in that mouth.
All right. Now, a fourth question she got today about the Family Foundation. So the question from the press was, do you regret the way the Clinton Foundation handled foreign donations while you were in office as Secretary of State?
I am so proud of the foundation. I'm proud of the work that it has done and that it is doing. It attracted donations from people, organizations from around the world. And I think that just goes to show that people are very supportive of the life-saving and life-changing work it's done here, at home, and elsewhere. And I'll let the American people make their own judgments about that.
All right, so in that response, was she spinning or was she speaking her heart?
Well, one of my favorite phrases on this show, false binary, spinning and speaking her heart simultaneously. I think that the bottom line for her and her husband is that they think that the foundation does good work and that part of the way in which you get to do good work is you got to get your hands dirty along the way, and that in the end, the ultimate good, the massive good weighed against the grubbiness of it, the good triumphs over the grubbiness. That's how they feel in their hearts, but it's also a very political answer.
Well, and she didn't address, and the questioner didn't press on, the sloppiness of the way the foundation handled itself.
Right.
I think that the best thing about that answer, for again, part spin, part heart, is the calmness of it. And that is more like the real Hillary Clinton and not the fake Hillary Clinton on that answer. Not as good as the previous one we looked at, but still pretty strong. But the foundation questions are going to keep coming because she didn't address the heart of things, just as she didn't on the Blumenthal question.
And again, you got to put a little bit of fault here on some of the reporters. They've been waiting now for a month to get these questions in, and they answered questions that she was easily allowed to dodge.
Asked questions.
Sorry?
You said answered questions.
As they asked questions that she would set her up to answer in a simplistic and spinny way and then be able to pirouette off. And
to be fair, it wasn't an interview, so it would be hard to follow up and all of that.
All right, finally, question number 5, which didn't come from a media-credentialed American, but rather from one of the everyday sorts at a so-called roundtable who asked where Hillary stands on the trade deal known as TPP.
I have said I want to judge the final agreement. I have been for trade agreements. I have been against trade agreements. I've tried to make the evaluation depending upon what I thought they would produce, and that's what I'm waiting to see.
So later in the day, our colleague Peter Cook got to ask Elizabeth Warren about this. Warren more or less took a pass on hammering Hillary, even though she's continuing to equivocate. My question for you is she ever going to have to actually take a position on TPP, or can she continue to do this thing that she's doing all the way through to 2016?
It seems pretty clear to me that she's going to use this excuse and saying, well, until there's a final thing, I'm not going to weigh in, even though plenty of people are weighing in, obviously, including members of Congress and the president, without a final deal. It's a huge dodge. I don't think they've clearly decided it's better to dodge it than to take a position.
But again, and I don't mean to be overly critical of our colleagues in the press, but there is a proper way to ask this question, which is if you were a member of the Senate as you once were, you're being asked to approve fast track authority. You have to take the deal as currently written. Would you vote yes or on fast track or no on fast track? Where she couldn't say, I want to wait to see the final deal, because that's not how it works. You got to vote on fast track, yes or no.
Yeah.
Not ask the question that way.
I mean, look, this is an inside thing. This is not like the 47%. This is not like saying we were dead broke. I think she could. I think it's unfortunate she can get away without taking a position, but I think she's pretty dug in now, and I don't think she will. And it's unfortunate because it'd be nice to know where she stands.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Enough Hillary Clinton for the moment. Coming up, the man with the Milwaukee Bucks and a wallet full of bucks, Mark Lasry, is here with us right after this. Our guest tonight astrides two worlds. Now make that three worlds. He's a Clinton person, he's an Obama person, and he's the co-owner of the Milwaukee Bucks, who made the playoffs this year in the NBA. He's also, by the way, founder of Avenue Capital Group. Mark Lazar, one of the moneyest money men in the Democratic Party. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.
All right, you all made the playoffs. You're out now. Who do you like in the finals and why?
Well, I think it'll be Golden State and Cleveland. I'm a big fan of Golden State. I think they're a great team. Great players. So
who covers LeBron in the finals?
Oh, God, I don't know. I don't think anybody can cover LeBron in the finals. But, it's a team sport, so I think at the end of the day, Golden State should win.
Okay.
So last week you hosted one of Mrs. Clinton's first fundraisers when she came through town, and she did a bunch of fundraisers. Yep. A lot of people in that room are members of the 1%, I think it's fair to say, who are giving money to her. There was a story in the New York Times a few weeks earlier where Amy Chozick quoted somebody from who had been at a meeting where she apparently said that she was interested in an economic policy that involved toppling the 1%. I know a fair number of people in the donor world who didn't like that story very much and didn't like what she is said to have said. Was there much tension in the room among New York donors? Are they all happy with her, or did you have a sense that they're not that happy with her kind of move to the left on economics?
No, not at all. I mean, I think it was a great fundraiser. I mean, it was oversold, so we had more people who wanted to come that actually could fit in our house, in our townhouse. I thought she was fabulous. Everybody loved her. I thought she gave a great speech when she was there, so it went extremely well.
But do you think there will be any issues around? I mean, she is clearly kind of moving to the left on economics, which is not necessarily where a lot of the donor class is. So is that going to create any kind of conflict down the line for her in terms of being able to raise the kind of money she needs to raise to compete?
I don't think so. I mean, I think she is moving a little bit to the left, and I think that's fine. And people who are giving money to her understand that. And obviously, some people have some issues. I think the vast majority won't have issues.
One of the things that happened in the last cycle with your candidate from last time, President Obama, running for election, is it was harder for him to raise super PAC money for his supporters, too, because there are a lot of rich Democrats who don't like giving to super PACs. They think they're a nasty force. People talk about Hillary Clinton raising $2 billion plus. Right. Is she in any danger of not being able to raise as much super PAC money as the other side?
I think the Democratic super PAC will raise a little bit less than the Republican one.
A little bit?
Yeah, but I don't know what the numbers end up being. I think it'll definitely be less, right? I don't think the campaign's trying to raise $2 billion. I know that's a number that's gotten thrown around. I think it's closer to $1 billion, somewhere around $1 billion plus. But you'll raise money on the super PAC. I don't know what that amount will be.
But you think Hillary Clinton will go into a general election, assuming she's a Democratic nominee, being outspent by the other side, something the Clintons hate?
Look, it is what it is. I mean, I think if they get outspent, they get outspent. I think we're going to be able to raise quite a bit of money for her. I think she's a phenomenal candidate. I think as people get more and more excited about it, there'll be more and more money that'll be raised. It also depends on who the Republican nominee is. I mean, I just don't know. Right now, it's kind of hard to raise a lot of money when you don't know who you're running against.
Do you have a sense from President Clinton, who I know is a good friend of yours and you spend a lot of time with, I think most recently over in Marrakesh, right? Do you have a sense from him about how he feels right now about his wife's prospects generally, and more specifically about who he thinks will be the toughest possible opponents that she might face on the Republican side?
I think he views her prospects as being very, very good, obviously. I think he's, if he had to choose, he would tell you she's the best candidate out there. It's a biased view, but I think that's definitely it. I think as to who would be, who's going to be the best nominee on the Republican side, I think Jeb Bush would be very strong. I think Governor Walker would also be very strong. I mean, they're very different. Rubio, obviously, but I think at the end of the day, it's either going to be Bush or Walker or Rubio.
Right.
Single biggest personality trait difference between President Clinton and President Obama is what?
Oh, wow. Hadn't thought of that. I think President Clinton, just loves being with people. I think if you're with President Clinton, he just adores being and campaigning and talking to people. I think President Obama likes it. I wouldn't tell you it's his reason for being.
Yes, it's certainly not the case. Just to come back to Bush and,
Sure.
and your sense, again, a lot of people in the New York donor world.
Right.
There was in 2012, there were a lot of people, again, in your world who didn't look at Mitt Romney as the enemy.
Right.
They kind of sort of thought, well, we prefer Barack Obama maybe, or we prefer Romney, but it wouldn't be a horrible thing if Romney was the nominee. Do you feel, or if Romney were to be the president, is there a similar kind of feeling, you think, among New York donors about Jeb Bush? That there's a sense that, maybe they prefer her to him, but that he would be all right as president?
I think there's a view, you definitely want Hillary to be the president. And I think the vast majority of people that I know absolutely support her and think she would be phenomenal. I think Jeb Bush would be viewed, if he ended up becoming president, I would look at him and think he'd be reasonable, he'd make a good president. I think I would look at it very differently with some of the other candidates.
Right.
Go Bucks.
Yes.
Thank you, Mark Lazar.
Next year, NBA champions.
After the break, the top one reason we'll miss David Letterman. Right after this.
Tomorrow night, David Letterman bids farewell. And the send-off for him has been unsurprisingly hilarious to watch. Sure, Letterman's got all the celebrities, but he also got all the POTUSes and would-be POTUSes. Barack, Bill, W. To piece it all together, we sent the great Will Leach to the Ed Sullivan Theater to reminisce.
When CBS was attempting to woo David Letterman to their network in 1993, they didn't appeal to him as a comedian. They appealed to him as a broadcaster, as a newsman. They bought him a building, this building, the Ed Sullivan Theater, to tie him specifically to the history of television itself. Letterman was a brilliant comic, but more than anything, he was a creature of television. At a time when you watch a man's show every night simply because you trusted him, because you knew him. When politicians go on talk shows, like celebrities, they are selling you something. They invent the best possible version of themselves, and they all show it to you like it is real, so you will buy it. If you didn't bring your A game when talking to Dave, you could get burned. Ask John McCain.
He had to cancel the show because he's suspending his campaign because the economy is exploding. And you know John McCain is he's the running mate of Sarah Palin. You're aware of that?
Dave was constitutionally incapable of being dishonest on television. To sell something simply to sell it. Dave was Dave, could only be Dave, was always Dave. Like his idols Bob and Ray, Dave took a step away, removed from everything, and grinned, the two of you in on his private joke, aware of the artifice of it all, and somehow still standing right there in the middle of it. It's why Dave, when he was early in his career, was cast in sitcoms, looked so ridiculous. There was no character Dave could play. He was just Dave.
Perhaps you can understand this. Sit down and shut up.
He was just there, wry, knowing, with that lopsided gap-toothed smile, being an actual person in the middle of all the liars and frauds. He was us. He was a shock of actual humanity that exposed the rest of television as a ruse. As he grew older, Dave got a reputation of being mean. Cher famously called him an a-hole on air. But that wasn't quite right. Dave just didn't suffer idiots well. You believed Dave because you saw Dave every night and he never changed. He was always being honest. It made sense that when he finished his show, he just drove back home to Connecticut or flew out to his ranch in Montana and never did any schmoozing or hobnobbing with celebrity sorts. He had nothing in common with those people. This gave him a gravitas that was unexpected. He had an inherent BS detector that allowed him to interrogate politicians in powerful ways. My favorite was when he destroyed Rod Blagojevich during his bizarre media tour for The Apprentice right before he went off to jail. Dave's joking, but his disdain for Blagojevich is palpable.
Why exactly are you here? Honest to God. What?
Well, you know, I've been wanting to be on your show in the worst way for the longest time.
Well, you're on in the worst way, believe me.
He could cross the aisle, too. Remember when George W. Bush's folksiness was likable and real rather than cloying and infuriating? Bush was arguably never more affable than when Letterman grilled him on his infamous exchange with New York Times reporter Adam Clymer.
When that happened, I said to myself, this is the only honest moment of the campaign, when you called that guy an ass. Well, why not?
Have you heard President Obama talk more in depth, with more feeling about race relations during his entire presidency than he did about Baltimore on one of Letterman's final shows?
Too many communities don't have a relationship of trust with the police. And if you just have a handful of police who are not doing the right thing, that makes the job tougher for all the other police officers out there. It creates an environment in the community where they feel as if, rather than being protected and served, they're the targets of arbitrary arrests or stops. And so our job has to be to rebuild trust.
Most famously, Letterman addressed the nation in one of the first telecasts after September 11th. Many broadcasters and comedians attempted to find their place and their footing in the early days of that new world, but no one understood the moment and what it meant for the city of New York better than Dave. 14 years later, it feels just as true and sad and perfect as it did back then.
Courage, as you might know, defines all other human behavior. And I believe, because I've done a little of this myself, pretending to be courageous is just as good as the real thing.
We don't watch television for broadcasters anymore. The two Jimmys, Kimmel and Fallon, have shown in their far more amiable Letterman-Leno war. It's more about YouTube clips and providing a fun, happy place for celebrities to be goofy. We don't value Letterman's specific qualities, his adulthood, as much anymore. He's leaving at the right time. As funny as Letterman has always been, I'm going to miss Dave the broadcaster the most. He looked forward to his interviews with President Obama, not for cheap laughs, but legitimate, intelligent conversation. I'm going to miss the constant Dave in a world of buffoons and dopes and phonies. That was Letterman's signature genius. And now it's almost over. David Letterman has been the signature organizing principle of American pop cultural understanding for 33 years. And to be entirely frank with you, I have no idea what we're all going to do when he's gone.
Our thanks to the great Will Leach. We don't know what we're going to do either, Will. And we'll be right back. We are live 24/7 on BloombergPolitics.com. It's good today and every day.
Tomorrow, the great Mary Madeline joins us live right here in the set. Remember, we're on twice a day at 5 and at 8. Until tomorrow, sayonara.